Good afternoon, everyone. We're pleased to have you with us this afternoon to recognize the recipients of the Elliot M. Stone Award. Since 1990, NATO has presented the NATO Award of Excellence in Health Leadership to an individual who represent the highest ideals in data collection, analysis, or outcomes measurement, and whose creative efforts have made outstanding contributions to improvements in the collection, application, and/or dissemination of health data. Until his passing in 2005, Elliot Stone helped NATO select the awardees who made significant contributions to the health information field and who exhibited characteristics of quality, excellence, and passion in their work, characteristics that Elliot himself embodied. In 2005, following Elliot's untimely passing, the NATO Board renamed its annual award the Elliot Stone Award of Excellence in Health Data Leadership, in honor of Elliot and in acknowledgement of his generosity, care, and diligence to the field and to his colleagues. Elliot set the highest standards for his own performance and for others to follow. At NATO's 20th anniversary meeting in Washington, D.C., the first Elliot Stone Award of Excellence was presented posthumously by NATO to Elliot's wife and sons. Karen Lee Harrington, NATO's board chair, will now present the 2020 Elliot M. Stone Award. Karen Lee.
Thanks, Norm. It is my pleasure to present this year's Elliot M. Stone Award of Excellence in Health Data Leadership. I did not know Elliot. However, what I've learned about him from those that did is that he was passionate about his work and set high standards for himself and for those that worked with him. Similar characteristics of this year's recipients, who are not only being recognized for their individual contributions in all things related to health data, but also for their combined efforts in promoting the value of investing in a health data infrastructure to be used to inform and create a more affordable healthcare system with better outcomes and improved access to care. Sue-Ann Singer, the former president of OnPoint Health Data, previously the Maine Health Information Center, and Al Przonka, the former executive director of the Maine Health Data Organization, and more recently a consultant with Milliman, led the construction of the nation's first APCD, nearly 20 years ago for the state of Maine. Together, Sue-Ann and Al identified the challenges associated with the collection and processing of claims data. They collaborated with stakeholders to find common ground to address many of the early barriers, and they worked tirelessly to overcome the political and technical impediments. Sue-Ann and Al designed the framework for both what to collect in an APCD and how to build a successful one. Sue-Ann spent more than 35 years developing innovative solutions across the array of healthcare data systems, including software development, data collection, validation, linkage, master patient and provider indices, analysis, privacy, security, claims adjudication, and integration with hospital discharge data. Suzanne's work, long recognized for its insight and creativity, is matched by the respect she garnered from her team, colleagues, and clients. Al spent over 23 years promoting the value of states investing in systems to collect, validate, and release healthcare data, including hospital encounter data, claims data, hospital financial and healthcare quality data. Al was instrumental in the development of the APCD Common Data Layout, the NCPDP standard for reporting paid pharmacy claims data to state agencies, and he was a champion of the state agency agreement with Medicare. Al is recognized by his peers as being tenacious, detail-oriented, and a subject matter expert in data collection and standards. Because of the groundwork that Sue-Ann and Al laid today, there are over 30 entities that are collecting multi-payer healthcare claims data. There's a common understanding that data standards are critical in data collection, data validation, and in data linking, and that access to comprehensive healthcare data is essential to understand and improve outcomes and to better inform health policy decisions at all levels. Both Sue-Ann and Al live in Maine, and we thought it was appropriate to give them something that was made in Maine in recognition of this honor. So we sent lighthouse bells. For over 2 centuries, Maine lighthouses have stood as beacons in the night along Maine's 3,400 miles of rocky coastline. There are 65 lighthouses in Maine, and all have stood the test of time. Lighthouses symbolize many things, including the way forward and help in navigating our way through rough waters. Like the lighthouse, Suzanne and Al's leadership provided a path through the haze of developing and maintaining an APCD. Their contributions have stood the test of time, and continue to light the way for many of us as we navigate through the challenges and the new opportunities of healthcare data collection and data use. Presenting this award is especially meaningful to me, as Sue Ann and Al are respected leaders in my home state that I, like many, have admired. Their individual and collective efforts will have everlasting impact on the collection, application, and dissemination of healthcare data. And for that, we are forever thankful. On behalf of the NATO Board of Directors, please join me in congratulating this year's recipients of the Elliot M. Stone Award of Excellence in Health Data Leadership, Sue Ann Singer and Al Przonka.
Thank you. We will now hear some remarks from Al and then from Sue Ann.
Karen Lee, thank you for the kind and thoughtful words. It appears by the great work that you are doing at the MHDO right now that you were able to figure out my filing system after I left. It is indeed an honor to receive this award. I was fortunate to have known Elliot. He was indeed a pioneer in the healthcare field and a wonderful individual. I would first like to thank NATO for selecting Sue Ann and I this year. What will make it most memorable to me is that this is being presented as part of NATO's first virtual conference held during a pandemic. Success, although often attributed to one person, is usually the result of a group effort, or in today's parlance, it takes a village. That is the case with the creation of Maine's APCD. I could not have done it without the support of the MHDO board, Maine Health Data Organization Board, which wanted paid data, not charge, and they wanted also more notoriety at the time. And also the Maine legislature, which just happened to have a number of legislators who I had known for a number of years assigned to key committees. The resulting legislation enacted during that session in 2001 created the Maine Health Data Processing Center, which was a true public-private partnership composed of the MHDO and the Maine Health Information Center, now as known as OnPoint, and it had a directive to build an APCD for Maine. And I will tell you that the one person who was key to the success of that partnership was Sue Ann. Sue Ann possessed the technical experience with regard to claims data. At the time, I was but a neophyte with health data, having spent a large number of years in the environmental field. During the many months we were working on the rules and the requirements to create the Maine APCD, I would frequently say to her, "This makes no sense." And she would always respond with a smile and say, "Well, that's healthcare." In the early years of promoting APCDs to other states, Sue Ann and I spent a good deal of time traveling together. There are a number of things that I will always remember, but I will never forget our trip to Montpelier, Vermont, one December, to give an APCD presentation to the state officials. On the return drive in the dark on secondary roads, we came over the crest of a hill, and in the distance was an eerie and disconcerting glow illuminating the countryside. As we arrived at the source, we were simultaneously relieved, amazed, and then stunned to observe a display of inflatable Christmas lawn ornaments in front of a house so extensive that a snowflake falling to earth would find only plastic as its final resting place. Without uttering a word, we both knew that New Hampshire was behind us and we were back in Maine. On a more serious note, because I have to be somewhat serious with this, given the political and technical issues that arose when APCDs were first being developed and implemented, it amazes me that so many states have found the will and the financial resources to build an APCD. I'm also encouraged by the number of states currently in the process of creating an APCD or seriously considering one, even as state budgets have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. Who could have imagined 2 decades ago how these databases are now being used to better understand cost, quality, and access issues, which is the so-called 3 legs of the healthcare stool. And more recently, data from APCDs are being used to better understand the opioid crisis and now the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps some of you actually did imagine the future importance of APCDs in 2002. I will confess to you that I did not. I was more of a pragmatist, or some would call an incrementalist, not a visionary. I was focused on solving the problems as they arose. However, I did not operate solely in the present. I would continually ask myself, and others, some others, and I still ask this, now that we have all this data, so what? How is it being used to modify changes in law, rules, or policy, and how will it reshape our healthcare system? So I think the question we should be asking ourselves today is, what will our healthcare system look like in the future, and what type of health data will be necessary to bring real, substantial, and long-lasting improvements to it? And I have one more question for you to ponder. In keeping with the lighthouse theme, which state has the most lighthouses located within its boundaries? I'll give you a hint. The name of the state begins with M. With that, I will now turn it over to the one and only Sue Ansinger, my partner in crime.
Thank you, Al. We did that. That was a true story, that Vermont trip. I'm amazed you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I asked Norm what he wanted me to talk about since I've been out of the business for a few years, and he suggested I tell you about what it was like in the beginning. Well, since I worked with the MIC, now On Point, from 1979 until 2016, I can definitely do that. Believe it or not, I actually started with claims. In 1979, I was hired to develop a hospital system to electronically submit bills directly to the payers. For the beta testing, we installed software and printers at several sites. One hospital had intermittent printing problems that stymied us. And one day, the medical records director diagnosed the printing problem as the buffer. I listened patiently to her theory, and then, in what I still hope today wasn't a condescending tone, I explained what a buffer was and why it couldn't possibly be the buffer. She listened patiently to me and then exclaimed, "But I meant the floor buffer. Whenever we plug it into the same outlet as the printer, it won't work." That day, I learned things aren't always what they seem, and an important lesson in humility. As you probably know, Maine has long been a state rich in its healthcare data. In the early 1970s, well before the Dartmouth Atlas, Jack Wenberg was using Maine discharge data for his groundbreaking population-based studies. On Point used hospital discharge data every way it could to answer healthcare questions, but it wasn't enough. So we made our first foray into claims data in the mid-'80s, but with dismal results. One very small hospital's data, and I mean small, fewer than 50 employees, revealed scores of patients had had a craniotomy at that very hospital in the 1980s. We left claims data alone for a few more years. When we did re-enter that world, it was on behalf of employers. In 1995, a group of small and large Maine employers asked us to help them understand how they were spending their dollars. With employers pressuring their payers, we were able to build a multi-payer, all-setting claims database without a standard format or even standardized coding across payers. We were forced to design software to normalize the submissions and develop algorithms to assess its quality before reports were generated. Suddenly, we were no longer in the black and white data world of discharges where all errors were corrected in every single discharge record. Of course, we tested the claims data for valid codes, but how much noise or dirty data could be tolerated without impacting data integrity? What was the distribution of the coded data appropriate? I remember once we received a month of claims for a group of 35,000 members with only 100 outpatient records, all valid, but the volume, 100? This led us to develop algorithms to flag suspected issues. I distinctly recall sitting at Reagan National Airport one time drafting the first of these algorithms. As data use grew, we were constantly identifying new ways to test the data to determine its strengths and weaknesses as early on in the process as possible. 7 years into our private multi-payer database, the Maine Health Data Organization, under Al's leadership, mandated the creation of a statewide all-payer claims database. Now, On Point's years of experience, both editing and using claims data, could join with the state's authority to mandate collection and publicly disseminate it to form a unique public-private partnership, which Al described so well before. This time, we mapped data elements to the new HIPAA standards so that all payers could report with the same coding schemes and in a single standard, yet still customized Maine format. That's the early history of claims data in Maine. I suspect if you look back into your own history, you'll find Maine documents that helped you create your database from fundamentals that we hammered out more than 2 decades ago. I can't believe it's been that long. When I worked from home in 1980, I used an acoustic coupler with a high speed at 1100 baud. Thank heavens we didn't have a pandemic back then. And 2 years of discharge data, that's 360,000 fixed length records, were stored on a removable disk drive that had 6 18-inch platters stacked in what resembled a huge cake carrier. Let me tell you, I needed muscle to swap those drives out. Times have certainly changed for the better. In closing, I want you to know I had the best job in the world. I worked with an amazing group of people who had vision, integrity, and wanted to make a difference. Yes, it was often challenging and certainly frustrating, but it was so worth it. I am honored by the award and find it particularly appropriate to share it with Al. It is a great tribute to the amazing data work done here in the state of Maine by many talented and dedicated people. From my perspective, Al and I were just the tip of the iceberg of what the people of Maine have done and are continuing to do now. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I wish there was a way to do some sort of virtual round of applause, but they can't see you. So those of us will do it for you. And again, congratulations and thank you for all you've done and for your efforts. And thank you, Karen Lee, for nominating them and for helping us to see the importance of the work that they've done in the past. And we're now going to break and let people get to their networking sessions. And we'll see you all again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Al.